All right, we're here, the assembled members of Giant Bomb who have finished The Last of Us Part 2, ready to spoil the heck out of The Last of Us Part 2. I'm Brad Shoemaker. Vinny Caravella is here.
Yes, finally. Hey, before we start, I like this game.
Okay.
I like this game.
You just want to get that out of the way?
I like this game. I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Jano Show.
That's me.
Right.
I've since I finished this game, I've been buying guitars and then just leaving them around San Francisco.
Good for you.
It's a good thing, squirrel a few away just in case you need them.
Just in case.
Probably going to need them. Abby Russell, how's it going?
I'm doing very well, thank you so much. I have mixed feelings on this game. I think it's too long, but we can get into that later.
Ooh,
I'm sure this podcast will be just the right length.
Yes, I'm sure. It won't overstay its welcome to the tune of 35 hours or so.
Maybe halfway through, we'll put on 4 other guests, and we can see their perspective on it.
All right,
Put on the spot.
Thanks for joining us.
That's kind of what I wanted to just say. I like this game right at the top because I feel like I can kind of get it out of the way in 2.5 minutes instead of 30+ hours.
Boy, should we reiterate, clarify, just in case it wasn't clear? Don't listen to this if you haven't played through this game or care.
Or listen to this
about
I
spoilers.
almost
play the game.
started my intro by being like, I cut off 2 fingers as tribute for this game. I was ready to spoil everything right from the start.
Yeah, definitely. If you're interested, I would say if you're interested in discovering the story on your own, don't listen to this. If you're not interested in playing the game or have finished or want to hear us do a spoiler, everybody who's listening to this knows what that means. So
Yes.
this is like, but much like The Last of Us 2, let's spend about 15 minutes explaining what spoilers are and why you shouldn't listen to it.
So there's a tone. There's a tone forming here.
Like I want to say at the beginning, like I like this game. I don't think I love this game, but I like it, and I think it's a good game. But I think it has missteps, and I think it is a little too heavy-handed and a little ham-fisted in some parts, trying to get its message across. Which by the end of the game, I wasn't exactly sure what my takeaway was supposed to be, which can be a good thing, which can be fine. And I guess, can I start with Last of Us 1?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because there are definitely things about this game that definitely made me reflect on that, and in some ways almost seemed like they were trying to recontextualize some of the stuff in that game. Specifically, around like the Fireflies and their what their inherent morality may be, and like how justified they were, and et cetera, et cetera. But go ahead.
So they spend a lot of time in Last of Us 2 trying to put different, not weights, but the ending of Last of Us 1, where Joel makes the decision that he would rather save Ellie's life than sacrifice her for the chance of a vaccine or a cure, is the end of Last of Us 1. It's a pretty weighty decision that I had problems with because it's one of those games where they give you false choice. They kind of they give you control of the character. Well, they give you control of the character, but you can't do anything but move forward and commit the action, right? So it's like the illusion of choice of because when I played it, I was like, no, I'm not. This is a bad choice, Joel. Don't do this. But then it's like, well, I guess if I want to finish the game, and this happens again in Last of Us 2, which I also did not appreciate.
I kind of agree with you. I don't know if that I would say there's a reasonable expectation of choice there, though, because it's like, in any given boss fight, you don't have the choice to not kill the boss to progress the story, right? So
no, but usually the boss isn't whimpering on the ground and saying,
"Oh yeah,
don't
totally
kill me," and then you're like, well.
So
I guess I have to.
So that encounter has the trappings of a moral choice, but they don't actually, because it's not that kind of game,
no, there are multiple endings.
I didn't mind that it was like a fake choice, because even in the moment I remember playing it, being like, I don't want to shoot this doctor, but I was like, well, we're doing it. But I liked the ending so much that I didn't care, because I was like, this is a curated story. I like the story they're telling.
Yeah, you're embodying.
I didn't like the curated story as much.
You're embodying authored characters with their own agendas and intents, and
that's right. And you have to make a lot of bad choices throughout the game anyway. Most of them are in cutscenes. But anyway, Last of Us 1, that game ends with basically that hanging in the air that Ellie doesn't really know what has happened. I think Joel kind of tells her some story, and this is all recap, so actually I do know. Ellie is left thinking that the vaccine was a no-go. There were other candidates. It wasn't going to work anyway.
Well, it's very. I went back and watched the ending of the first game again. It's very ambiguous. Like the last exchange in the game is she's basically like, "Swear to me that you're telling the truth about."
And does he?
That whole thing, and he's like, "I am."
And I think she's just like, okay.
She's like, okay, but like it's super ambiguous whether she believes him or not, which is.
But I think that's effective. Like I thought that was a very effective ending, and I at the time too, it felt like such a fresh take on a game where it felt like, oh, they are telling a story here that's not just like we wrapped it up, you saved the day, which I really appreciated at the time.
And I think it leaves the state of that world in an interesting place where, for me at least, there was, in the state of this world, because I didn't take away at the end of that game that there was a singular vaccine specialist in the world, and this was the last chance. I didn't have that sense at the end of Last of Us 2, at the end, or Last of Us 1. The end of Last of Us 1, I was like, oh, maybe someday there will be a cure. It just won't be from Ellie, and the life will go on. The fireflies will keep going. I didn't know it was like basically the damnation of all humankind.
I also it as the damnation. I was also like, well, this is the end, but he chose like. Yeah. This relationship for him. It's also, I don't know. I mean, we can talk about The Last of Us 1 for however long we need. Like, I don't know. Do we really want to spend this much time on this?
I think it's important framing for like what goes on in this game.
Sure.
I think for The Last of Us 1, I saw it very much as like so effective because I think it was Joel making a choice for like love and just living the life that he has versus like trying to make the world what it was. Do you know what I mean? And like I still think it's a selfish choice.
It is.
I think I also in Last of Us 1 and then even more so in Last of Us 2, I was very frustrated that Ellie just never got the choice. And I know you really couldn't in Last of Us 1 because you needed to tell this like narrative of like Joel saving her, but it was just like they put her under and they were going to kill her instead of just being like, can we do this to you? Are you okay with this? Yeah. Yes. Because like she would have said yes and it would have been like problem solved.
Right.
And that was only doubled down in this game when they had this whole conversation with like Abby and her dad of like, well, you're going to kill this girl. And it's like, I would do it. And it's like, just ask her if she would do it. Just ask Ellie.
I've been kind of surprised going into this game how much a lot of people and apparently this sequel both seem to treat it as like a given that the Fireflies were going to be successful. Like everybody, like a lot of people. A lot of people, but I've totally seen a lot of people act like, oh, it was a super black and white situation. Like Joel was the bad guy, the Fireflies were the good guy. It's like he made the selfish choice, and they were doing the selfless thing. But my memory of that game is that they're painted as a bunch of fanatics and fuck ups, and there was like no indication whatsoever that they were going to be successful. There was like some chance they might be. And also,
like they're trying versus
right. And there's also, like you said, there's also the part where they unilaterally decided to murder a child. Like I don't feel like there was no like morally good outcome in that situation. Like everybody was a shithead for one reason or another.
So that setup at the end, I thought was a pretty. I agree with Abby. Should we say Abby Russell? Like for the rest of this because it might get confusing.
That's gonna get
right. I agree with our Abby that it was like even though my thoughts about how they give you control or don't give you control or take it away or whether it's a bad choice, I thought that game ended and left the world in an interesting state where when they announced a sequel, I was like, I don't know if I want that. I kind of like where this was a complete story. It was interesting. I don't want to see the aftermath of this. Like, I feel like the interesting part was leaving it in this ambiguous space. And by the end of Last of Us 2, I think I still felt that way. I think I still felt like this didn't feel very necessary to me. And Last of Us 2 leans on, like it should probably, for the characters they have in it, a lot of that choice of it's the relationship between Ellie and Joel because of the choices Joel made. Abby's relationship with Ellie, which is like, let's say 95% of the game, because of the choices that Joel made. It's all aftermath of that choice.
I'm surprised how much it went that way because I had the same feelings about Uncharted 4 as I did about this game, which was like, hey, that stuff is done. Like, that story's told. Like, you don't need to make another one of these.
Yeah.
And then they made Uncharted 4, and it was about something completely different than the other games had been about. You know, like, it was more about family and background and, like, identity and stuff like that. Like, that was a case where none of it flowed from the previous games, really, with a couple of kind of minor exceptions. And so, like going into this game, I was shocked how much it was, like you said, it was like literally the thing that happens in the last 10 minutes of that game defines this entire sequel.
Which I was kind of frustrated by. Like, they had those like flashback sequences where it's like Ellie, like I think it was like towards the pretty close to the end. There's like that flashback sequence where Ellie is talking to Joel on like the porch after Joel like kind of gets in the way of that like homophobic dude, and Ellie's like, I can handle my own problems, this and that, and then it just like suddenly turns into like, why didn't you let them kill me? And it's like, where's what? No, it just felt very contrived to me. Of like, we got to keep talking about this thing, like.
Well, I think the there are flashbacks within flashbacks, and I think there might be 3 nested flashbacks at some point in this game. So that part didn't seem that weird to me because I felt like they were through the just barrage of flashbacks leading up to that moment where
sure,
because it needed to have the that was the first. Like it needed to have the moment right before Joel is killed. Spoilers. Right before Joel is killed to know where they left their relationship, right? Because you're
absolutely.
And that was the first.
And like
that was the
I
first.
hear you there, but I think like for me, just have a flashback where they're talking about the thing. Like, don't have this like weird intro of like this homophobic dude you got in the way. Anyway, it's just my hidden tension about this thing that we've been dealing with for years. It also, I think, frustrated me that it was like, oh, only like 3 years had passed. Like she's like 19 in this game, which I wish they made her older. I wish more time had passed. It just seemed like a weird choice to make her still so young.
But I think if you didn't have that particular flashback, and this is how I read it, which might be the most cynical take in the world, was like, well, if you don't have that one, you're not going to know how cool Joel was with her relationship, right? Like he's trying to be cool dad, right? And be like, but man, like, Joel was a cool guy. Look at him.
Way, you know?
That's what I'm saying. It was like most of that stuff felt like trying to secure up and be like, I'm going to make you feel real bad that Joel was killed. Like, look, she was just going to forgive him. He was trying to be super cool and protect Ellie, but also be like, I'm cool, Dad. I'm going to call Joel Ellie's dad for probably the rest of this because I feel like it's just shorthand for their relationship.
Sure.
Even though Ellie doesn't really mention her parents, I don't think
in the first game a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I don't think in this one.
In Left Behind.
Oh, Marlene knew her mom. Like there's a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's yes, which is I think is part of her motivation for wanting to be a firefly or whatever.
But. So, do we want to talk about specifics in the story or just kind of general feelings? Because the thing meanders so much. There's like a cut of this that is probably a linear, like some kind of Blade Runner-esque director's cut where or like The Godfather.
What would you cut out though? Like what is not relevant?
Oh my gosh!
What would I cut out? I will tell you exactly what I cut out. So, like, I think you could probably trim down Ellie's section a bit. I didn't mind how long it was, but by the time we got to Abby, we had that first cutscene where she is with her dad, and it's made clear that, like, oh my God, they saved a zebra. They're good people. She collects coins. And, like, we get that, like, she has humanity. She has a relationship with the person that was killed there. That is enough for me to have empathy for this character. I don't need 8 more hours of her back and forth and like love triangle with this like fucking pregnant woman and her weird ex-boyfriend that I like did not give a shit about, and it was so melodramatic and like the weirdest fucking sex scene I've ever seen. And like I don't know, I like her whole storyline I just felt like was so overly long that I was like not invested in it. And then also I felt like all of the story beats were like so like melodramatic and corny in a way that I'm like, who fucking gives a shit? I also found it very manipulative, which really took me out of it, where it's like, you're walking through the world. Oh my God, you see Alice, you see Bear, you play Fetch the Bear. Remember killing that dog? Like, yeah, I remember killing that dog. It tried to kill me.
It is
like,
very heavy.
I would do it again.
Like I think like, even in some more specific details, like some of the portrayals of her friends in Ellie's half of the game make them seem like complete irredeemable shitheads. Yeah. And then when you flip to Abby's side, they seem like the nicest, most caring people. Right. Like the contrast is a little too extreme in some cases.
I still didn't like the pregnant lady.
Yeah, well, I was also very frustrated because like it seemed like they wanted to have this like equal morals, right? Mm-hmm. But like you look at Ellie's story versus Abby's story, and Ellie's story has a similar love triangle with a similar pregnant person. But like you have this kind of like healthy relationship with like a healthy like former relationship, and they're all friends with each other. Whereas this story is like you have this relationship where this woman is pregnant. She's still going out on all these like very dangerous missions. Her boyfriend is running away. He's cheating on her with Abby. Like it's far less like it's like I don't know. I was a little bit frustrated because it didn't seem like they were on like morally the same levels.
I kind of took it that Abby's life starts to fall apart after they return from Jackson because she had already exacted her form of revenge. So this is like we're witnessing her life just falling to shit as she's like losing all of her friends as we go by.
As a consequence of her exacting her revenge, right?
As a consequence.
Sure. And I think that's probably the... Okay, that's
well, like they get super heavy, like ham-fisted with this because with Abby, she loses Manny, and then Ellie loses Jesse, literally like being shot through the eye for both. So it's like, oh, it's an eye for an eye.
Some of the like the mirror image of like every detail on both sides was maybe a little much, but
the kind of grand sum total of, I think Abby said this Abby Russell said this at the very beginning of when we started, is like the gram sum total at the end of revenge, huh? It's never gonna make it leave you. It's always gonna leave you empty. Is like a pretty hollow way to leave this 30-hour narrative. If that's the last thing we're gonna get of like, it's just never gonna be satisfying. Just revenge always just leads to more death and more murder, and very much like and again, I like the game. Okay, I think the gameplay stuff. Just some of the story stuff let me feeling like, yeah, no, I know we knew the humans were the real monsters going into this one, and revenge is bad news. But like Ellie, like Bad Choice Simulator 2020 for Ellie, which is just like, what? Come on, Ellie, let's just put a pin in it.
I mean, to me, this game is that last encounter in the first game where you have to shoot the doctor when it sounds like most of us, I certainly didn't want to. It sounds like most of you guys didn't. I think it's probably a pretty common reaction. This game is that moment blown out to an entire game. Like it is we're going to continue forcing you to do things as this character that you personally don't want to do and disagree with. And I guess sit with that. Like I asked several times over the course of that game whether that was intentional or not. Like, do you think by the end of that game they expect people to be rejecting the things that they're being forced to do? Because I certainly was. And I wonder how much that was their aim.
I feel like for me, I don't know, people kept talking about how brutal this game is, this and that, and I didn't really experience that. Like there were parts where it was like, this is graphic, like shooting someone with a shotgun, like you're shooting with a shotgun.
I don't care about like aiming at a gun and
sure,
people.
But
it's more
stuff. And even those, it was like
it's specifically like inflicting like suffering on helpless people type stuff. That's pretty uncomfortable.
Sure, I don't know. I wasn't like it wasn't as big of a moral choice for me as Joel's was. I think also because I didn't have the buildup that Joel's had of like seeing this man lose his child and then like form a relationship with this other child and now have to like deal and with the fact that like he might lose her again. They had so many moments where they're trying to like give you this heavy weighty thing that's like you're doing it all the fucking time that makes them all flat to me. So it really, the only time I was like, I don't want to do this was when I was playing as Abby trying to kill Ellie. It's like, I know it probably won't happen because this is like, I'm sure I have like 5 more hours of this game.
But like the second,
that was the only time I was like, I don't want to do this.
That kind of like second person view of when you have to basically beat Nora to death to get information out of her. Like I did not feel great after that one.
I feel like I remember that one, but I feel like I also kind of saw it coming. Like maybe because people kept hyping up how brutal and graphic and violent it was, but it was also like, I think, I don't know, maybe after like that GTA torture sequence when it's like just cutting to her face and like, it's like, well, I know it's coming. You know what I mean?
Yes, I kind of, I'm with you. I thought I was going to have a hard time stomaching a lot of it, and I didn't. That Nora part was tough. The only part that I wanted to put the controller down, and I almost just didn't finish the game, was the, we're at the very, very end where you have to do that last hit on Abby, where she's in the water and she's saying just like, please no, just infinite amounts of blood coming out of her face. Was like, no, we're like, I'm good here. Like Ellie, you've won. Like kind of walk away, but you actually, I walked away once and she got back up and you have to do that whole Metal Gear-esque sequence of boxing again. And then you kind of put she just stays there bleeding infinitely. I just waited and she never, I was like, well, maybe she'll just bleed out.
Like I think it wasn't until that point in the game that I decided that it must be intentional on the part of the developers to make you feel that way by then, because I kind of hated Ellie by that scene. You know, I was just like, fucking stop, like let it go. Like
let it go.
I think I also, like, this is maybe terrible, but I think also by that point I was so ready to finish the game and I was like, whatever.
I'm kind of with you.
Either like the game is going to make me do a thing or not. I'm just going to fucking do what they want me to do and not have this moral of like, ooh, can I not? And just like fucking finish it.
I think
like, I was so ready to be done by then.
I was in a similar spot, but like with like a different motivation of like, I just can't keep going. Like I need this to end because like it's not emotionally draining me, but it's like I can't keep going because I don't have a choice in this, and I don't want Ellie to go further down into like a poop hole of like morality or whatever.
She goes down the poop hole. Like she's damaged goods. Like I thought that was actually very effective. I almost wish they had done this earlier on when she's trying to be with Dina in the house and having like flashbacks of that stuff. And like, that was probably the most effective thing for me of like, okay, she cannot live her life because she has seen too much stuff, right? She's seen too much. And like, you know, she's like, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I just can't enjoy life. And like that to me justified a little bit of the, like, okay, she's not well. Like she's unwell, and this is very bad. We all know this isn't going to end well because revenge isn't going to be the thing. But like, that to me felt very motivated at that point, unlike the rest of the kind of initial outset of, listen, they killed Joel. You know exactly why they killed Joel, or pretty quickly she finds out why they killed Joel, because you find out she knew that she was this vaccine.
I was surprised how long they actually dragged that out. Like I kept expecting some grand reveal of some other thing in his background that they were after him for, and then it turned out like, no, it's exactly no, I know, but I because they kept dangling it in front of you, I assumed it would be something more complicated than it was. And then finally it's like, no, it's exactly the thing you thought it was. It's what he did in the last game.
So when you ask what parts would I cut out, I think Jesse as a character is almost irrelevant. Like I mean, sure. Like Tommy in the zone as a plot device to get Ellie to go out there with Dina, I guess makes sense. But like, also, I thought it was going to switch to Tommy's fucking perspective as he infiltrated the Scars at some point. It was like, okay, we got the wolves, we got Abby. Let's find out how the Scars are actually treating people now by cutting their bellies open, right? Like, oh, actually, this saves their life because there's some kind of alien parasite. Like, I thought we were going to get the empathetic Scars perspective, but they just fucking flush the Scars down the toilet at some point. They're just like, no, the Scars are all terrible. They're bad news.
I have like a lot of issues with some of the morals of that, because I feel like I was also expecting like, okay, we're going to empathize, like have a humanity, like the Scars humanity. Because I feel like so much of the game is like, you can find humanity in everyone. Like you see it in Jackson, you see it. But like they didn't do it for the Scars. Like it was like, well, these two escaped Scars, they're good. But like, see, they went back and like their mom tried to kill them. They're actually bad. Scars are bad. Go into their area and like shoot everyone. Like by the time I was going into the Scars thing playing as Abby, I was like trying to just sneak through and not kill anyone, because it felt so incongruous with what the game was telling me to do. And then by the time the game was over and you got to like the fucking rattlers or whatever, and they have like slave camps, it's like there's like what is this game saying anymore? Like there is no morals here for these people. There's no humanity for these people. Like the whole thing you just made me learn for like 8 hours of like two sides to every story is like, well, apparently not.
We're just past the point of saving. At that point, the vaccine wouldn't have done anything.
Well, the Scars thing, I feel like they try sometimes, like when Abby's like, there are kids here, and you're like, yeah, man, where do you think a scar comes from? Like, like, do you think scars just come out of stomachs, like fully formed, like that? And I mean, they really. I wish they spent more time, and maybe this will be some piece of DLC or something, but I wish they spent more time going into the Scar or the mythology of the Scars. Like I feel like that was the most interesting thing was what do they call the maiden, the woman who is the lady. Yeah, the one who's carved into all the trees.
They're their prophet, right?
Yeah. So like I wish I mean I got enough where it says like Isaac took her in for questioning and they killed her and made her a martyr, right? Like that's what happened there. But like I was so waiting for her to also be immune, and that's why people like celebrated her. Like, oh, she survived a zombie attack, and like this is why she's amazing, and like, or this is, and like for Ellie to have this weird connection with her and like realize that this woman didn't want a war, and she was just trying to figure out a way to survive this, and maybe she thought through piety she had this armor against it. Like I'm writing, I think, a more fleshed out version of this in my head than what was really there.
These games don't tend to use the world building as storytelling. They use it as a backdrop. You know, like these are very much character driven dramas. It's about what are specific people doing in this world that's marked.
But even still, like I feel like the Scar area was one of the least interesting areas when I was like
the island.
Even if they had, like I wish it was more interesting.
I think part of it was the game was
such build up of like
suffering from being too long at that point.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that also, but like I also agree with Vinny. I think that was one of the more interesting lores of like, holy shit, we keep seeing all these people getting hanged and like dismembered, and like there was no payoff for it really. And I also found like the Rattlers to be more interesting than anything else. You know, and I think
the Rattlers so dumb.
I mean, they're very dumb, but also I think they are more interesting than like the fucking military group. Sure. Also, Isaac's group, I feel like that was a little underwhelming too, because it's also like, again, I feel like the morals of this game are so weird because Jackson still seems like the most utopic place, even compared to like Isaac's group, which he's like, you go through this area and it's like, you're like torturing prisoners. You know, like there's that whole sequence where it's like, oh shit, Isaac is like clearly not a good guy. So it was like a little bit frustrating for me because it's like, I don't understand what the game is trying to tell me, and it just didn't feel as effective when it's trying to be like, look, everybody's a person and like everybody's got their own story in life. I don't know. I found it puzzling, and I also was just disappointed that the scars were boring as shit.
The Rattlers just felt like set him up for an easy kill at the end of the game. Like, here's this submachine gun, the silent submachine gun, just take them all out. Like, you don't even be stealthy anymore. Like, these guys suck.
Yeah, let's make them so reprehensible that you really don't mind just mowing all of them down.
No missing dialogue about like, oh, my family back in this place. It's all about like, yeah, tease these zombies. This guy had it coming. I did really enjoy the zombies on the chain though. That was good. Being able to sneak up and release the zombie.
That was a fun little sandbox moment for sure.
Yeah, that part was good. And then, you know, that basically the end of that game felt like a sandbox to just use every explosive and go loud and just bomb it all away until you release the like 5 prisoners that are in that one little cell, and you're like, where's Abby? And they're like, I don't know, she's on the beach, go down there. And you're like, all right, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I know. I thought we would get more of an explanation or like explore that further, but it was just like, well, I unlocked your door. You know what I mean?
Well, you don't even unlock the door. I think you push the bad guy and they get the keys and then they're out of there. But there's like 6 people in that cell. Also, I really thought, I'm kind of glad they didn't. I thought they were going to be cannibals. I thought it was going to be that bad. Like kind of the road style of like, oh, they're like using them as meat, because there's a couple of inferences where like you read a note that's like, oh, we're gonna have a really good harvest this this time, and like I was like,
oh, really good at farming.
Yeah, I guess they're just really good at farming. Apparently, they were really talking about corn. So yeah, they're. I really thought they were gonna be like locked up. I was like, oh, this is. And I was like, that's a little cliche. I feel like we've been here. Yeah. That's always the like last step on the zombie apocalypse. Humans are the real monsters. I don't. All right, the gameplay. I really liked. I thought the stealth was pretty good. I thought when you have to go loud, they give you the tools to go loud. I wound up playing a lot of times, especially towards the end, because I thought it would be faster, just restarting. They did the checkpoints so well.
I did that so often.
I'd say I did that too. I kind of checkpoint scummed a lot. I never restarted. But I wish I hadn't, because once I stopped doing that, it made me start just using all the tools I had at hand.
I know. I never restarted. It made it so much more fun, because I feel like I originally went into it kind of doing it like classic stealth game, even like the first Last of Us, which I played on a lot of the harder modes too, playing it again. So I was very much in the mindset of like, okay, I have to find like the perfect route. I got to figure out everyone's path, and then like if I fuck it up, I got to restart it. But then what would happen was it would be like, okay, I'm stealthing and I get like 3 or 4 guys, and they would get spotted, and then instead of just restarting, I would, because they kept giving you so much stuff, and in the beginning I'm like, this is way too easy, they're giving me shit left and right, but they kept giving you so much that eventually I was like, well, let's use it, and it made it so much more fun and so much more dynamic.
Not just in terms of items, but it's so flexible about letting you get in and out of, like, back into stealth once you get spotted. Like it's so generous about like, oh well, they lost you, you're quote unquote stealthed again, you know, and you can go in and out of it a lot. It feels very dynamic.
It was really fun to like do a sequence and be like, oh shit, I just got spotted, like stabbing a guy in the throat, and then like running and like diving into grass and then seeing them like look around me. It was really satisfying and really fun. And I remember there was one sequence in particular that I was like, oh, I love this gameplay, was when I first went into the like subway tunnels, I think in Seattle, and it's like all red and there's like clickers versus like the wolves, and I like pinned them against each other, and I like lit a bunch on fire, and then they're all running into fire, and everyone was screaming, like, and it was so satisfying.
Throwing a bottle into a soldier when the clickers are around, and like it's
everybody
it ends up feeling pretty like improvisational. Like you have a bunch of like a big toolkit, and you can just kind of do stuff.
And there would also be some moments where I was like sneaking behind a box, and like a wolf would run like directly past me and not see me, because it's like clickers are all around.
It's the whole thing feels very taut, and the audio cue for you're about to get spotted, I feel like, is incredibly oppressive. It's just like white, but it's very effective though. And like there were times when you can like when you grab somebody, you can kind of drag them as you're stealth killing them. And like I would literally like be dragging somebody behind a tiny pillar where it was just like barely shielding me while I was about to get spotted. Like and that's very exciting stuff.
In that sequence, Abby, you can like grab a wolf and then push them into a clicker. It's very satisfying.
That is,
I
feel
super
like,
fucked up.
I think it's.
I believe it. I feel like I never got a lot of the like, because I don't know. People were talking about how they would like have one person left, and they would be like begging for their life or whatever, or like they would like hold a gun to people's heads. And I never got that. I feel like I would just like I used that like bottle silencer all the time. It would just be like,
I know. Yeah. I got that a couple of times where I would there'd be a guy with their. Sometimes they get back up and try to grab their gun, but I usually would just like back away, pointing my gun at them until they bled out because no mercy, you know. The man, that whoomp sound so many times would be like, whoop, and I'd just be spinning the camera around because it just highlights the edge of the screen. So you just spin the camera around and be like, it was the first thing I upgraded for Abby was like the distance on the stealth vision because without that you're just blind half the time. I had a lot of Keystone Cop. I like the gameplay. A lot of Keystone Cop moments where like. So we're just walking around a box like a centimeter away from the person where they're just kind of like sneaking around the box and I'm sneaking around the other side just trying to gain up on them a little bit at each rotation of the box, which was very silly
that's fun
like,
though.
It felt a little bit of like, you run in a door, they run out the other door.
It's a little video gamey, but
it's very video gamey. I thought the Abby choke 'em out thing, where every time you do that and the person like looks at the camera for a quick second on that choke out, got corny after a while.
A little bit much, the facial expressions.
It's a little Call of Duty stab them and then the eyes roll up in the head or they look at you kind of thing. It was just like, okay, I get it. You're looking at me, and they like one time they should just wink at you. Like we're not really dead.
Don't worry, I'm about to just exit stage left. It'll be fine.
I'm not even sure what she's doing. I assume she's choking him out. It doesn't seem like they're snapping necks. Also, you can choke out clickers, like or like you can choke out zombies. I don't understand the zombie anatomy exactly what's going on. Are they just humans who are infected and basic human anatomy applies?
I think I remember hearing like a snap sometimes.
It looks like it looks like just visually it looks like the fungus is taking over more and more of the body. So
remember,
who can say?
Should we talk about the hospital sequence?
The Rat King?
Goopy,
that whole sequence felt kind of out of place. It's
like a Resident Evil game. I like it.
Resident Evil. I also I knew what was coming. Like the second you hear like the big bang, it's like, oh, there's gonna be like what was that game? Inside. There's gonna be like an inside like human blob that's gonna come and get us. Did it.
First of all, I thought that segment was really out of place in this game because, like I said earlier, like these games are typically about the characters and what they're doing in this brutal world. It's not the story is not typically about the world itself, but that was a part where it was more about world building about what had happened with the outbreak. But there was something so haunting about that sequence to me because, like, typically if you're out in a neighborhood or whatever and they're infected, you can assume like, oh, they were soldiers yesterday and now they're infected. It's like, sure, these are recent converts or whatever. But knowing that, you saw clickers and scrubs in there, like those were like frontline medical workers that were fighting the outbreak 25 years before, and there was something so like tragic and haunting about the idea of these people just being like prisoners held up against a wall for 25 years in this quarantine tent. You know what I mean? Like it was just something really creepy about somebody being stuck for that long in there.
Yeah. I also thought that all of the like dialogue, like pickups you get in that sequence, like all of the like written notes were very effective.
Yeah,
I think also in the state of our current world right now, we're especially effective of all these people being like, what's going on? Like, why can't I see my wife? This and that.
Like they won't tell me anything. Why the fuck is the military here? Like that's still,
yeah.
They need better paper in that world. Like everybody's got like unlined, just like parchment that looks like it was like papyrus. It looks like everybody's writing on papyrus. Nobody can get two pieces of paper. Everybody has to fit everything onto one double-sided piece of paper.
No clipboards.
No, nothing. It's just as raw, just written on here. I thought that sequence, and I'm kind of glad they didn't. It felt like they were building up to. Again, this kind of maybe goes to what you were talking about, Brad. They don't really do big story beats in the world, but I thought they were going to be like, oh, the government was testing out a new virus in this hospital, and like this was the source of the genesis of the outbreak here. Because there's some stuff about them talking about containment and like, hey, why don't they just nuke this whole thing? And like, no, we need to contain it in here, and we can't just eliminate it. So it definitely felt like they were trying to do some research in there, but it didn't sound like this is the spawning.
Yeah, I mean, I always got the impression that the outbreak was just kind of worldwide all at once.
The fungus sentient.
Yeah.
But that sequence was great. That's one of my favorite. Though the flamethrower's too much. Like we don't need the flame.
By that time, I was like, anything that makes me end this faster, I will be pleased with. I think also what frustrated me so much with Abby's storyline, it's like one of my least favorite things, which is like, okay, we're starting with a new character. Either I want it to be like it was in the first Last of Us, where it's like pretty much the same style of gameplay, fewer upgrades maybe, or different upgrades with Ellie versus Joel, but it was like 2 hours, right? Yeah. Whereas this was like, here's a new character, you're starting basically from the beginning, but she's not that much different from Ellie. Her guns are not that much different. Like, I want her to be either exactly the same with all the upgrades I just did, or completely different. Like,
it felt different. I wanted to feel. Me, I think
it did not feel very different to me. Like, you had that like fast gun, the like machine gun, or like the automatic gun, but that was kind of it. And then you had like a choke versus a stab.
The big one, well, the big one for me, and maybe it's because I was playing it on hard, so like there's more resource scarcity there. But she doesn't have free stealth kills. Like, you have to burn, you have to make shivs, and every time you get to do a stealth kill, you lose the shiv. So like there was a resource sink aspect to it that Ellie didn't have because she could just do free stealth kills all day long.
I kind of liked Abby's form of like momentum after you were to get like a kill melee wise. You could kind of chain that.
I never could get that to work.
I unlocked that and then never saw a single opportunity to use it, but I've seen people say that that's like their favorite ability in the game.
I'd have to like lure people to the same area.
Okay.
Yeah.
I felt like I wish I could get that to work better. Yeah, like I didn't enjoy the melee much at all. And there was one sequence, probably my least favorite sequence in the game, where I
know exactly
should have been using that. When you're with, is it Yara and Lev?
Yes.
Like the nighttime like hunter attack when you don't have your items.
Yeah,
I like that scene.
With the like fucking Miss Trunchbull ass lady.
Yeah,
coming at you with the sledgehammer.
Yeah. So it's after that. It's when you're at night and they have the torch and Lev has the bow and
it's just hunters coming out of the dark at you.
And they're just coming out and you don't have any weapons. You don't have any guns or anything, and you just gotta box them. And it's just like, all right, dodge. I felt like I got through it. I had to do it like 3 times, but I was never sure when to counter punch, right? When to be like dodge, punch. No, this time he went 3 swings. Is there like at least on the big guys? Video gamey. One of the big guys, it was like, oh, you dodge once and then you punch, and then now you have to dodge twice because now they're in their second phase, and then punch. Now they're gonna swing 3 times, but that did they reuse the same? It's a different woman, right? The big woman with the thing, right? It's not just like
she looked like the same fucking Miss Trunchbull ass lady every time, and then they had like the dude with the shaved head. I also love because like this game, aside from it being like a zombie game, for the most part is like very grounded and it's trying to be like grounded and real and gritty. So it's fun that they're like tank characters are like, well, it's just like a big lady. You know?
Right. What if big guy?
What if you could blow up a pipe bomb in this guy's face and he'd just be like, whatever.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that part too. You headshot him and he's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so many times where like you'd be forced to go through like jump down a level or go through a tight area. I thought like, okay, I'm gonna outsmart this game. I'm gonna throw a preemptive brick, lure them out, and then I'll be fine. And then it would just like rip the control away from you. Like those were the moments in the game. It's just like, I knew that was coming. Come on.
Yeah, but it happens. They do it in ways here, and I talked about this somewhere else. Maybe it was on the Beatscast, where you're given a choice of, in a loot scarce game, you want to explore all the areas, especially with collectibles and all that stuff. And sometimes you're given a choice between the crack in the wall and the door, and in your head, one of these things I'm going to go through, and somebody's going to like bum rush me from the side. I just need to make a choice now which one it's going to be, because there is no way to know. Bacalar said any door that's open to crack is always going to be a takeaway control from me moment.
Yeah.
But I feel like there are times when it's just like, I don't know, I'm wheeling this cart and the floor just went out from underneath me. And like, I was looking for the freaking safe code and now I can't get that safe. I mean, whatever. You're right. That is video games. And I at least appreciate that it felt like the shimmy through small crack didn't feel like a load all the time.
It's a like a mobility move. It's a gameplay trick,
So they did it enough times where you're like, oh, okay, you are actually maybe hiding loads in sections where there are longer versions of the shimmy through like a little crack in a wall. And they did that was smart. But in general, going back to the gameplay, I think they give you the tools you want. I think the stealth versus going loud is balanced very well, where you feel like you can do either. I think, like I said, towards the end, I thought just reloading the checkpointing, because they did it. Everyone was always under a minute. So like as soon as you off somebody, you're in a checkpoint. I thought that was great. So I was just like, if you watch my replay, it's a perfect Hitman style thing, because I just reloaded 7 times and like everybody went down. Because sometimes it was frustrating for me to be like, I'll go and I'll grab somebody and knife them, and then it's that boom. Hey, he's over what is it? It's trespasser, straggler. I forget what everybody has a name for you. Each group has a trespasser, straggler, Nobody ever says wolf. I think the scars call you something else.
They call you like apostate or something like that. I forget.
Yeah.
Well, I think they call Lev.
Yeah.
Oh,
although
right,
it was kind of fun. The only thing I liked about that one sequence in the scars where you're like running through the fire, although I mostly found it annoying, but there were parts where it would be like, one, I was like, who am I supposed to be shooting? What am I supposed to be doing? Like, what do they want me to do? What does the game morally want me to do? I couldn't figure it out. But there were parts when it would be like, your friends would be like, is that Abby? What the hell?
Yeah, right. Abby!
What are you doing here?
There was a moment. She seemed like a pretty prominent figure in that organization. So.
Yeah, no, she's way up there. I mean, Lev kills Isaac, right?
Yara kills.
Yara. Yeah, Yara. It's like, okay. That moment was so fucking cheesy of like, Yara, like you think she's dead on the ground and like one final death shot from the ground. I was like, fuck off.
I liked it. Maybe I just like
maybe I have a higher tolerance for cheese, but maybe we'll get into this more later. But I feel like things can, like, a story can work emotionally even if it doesn't necessarily work intellectually. Like if you can look at it from a distance and say like, yeah, that's a little corny, that's a little ham-fisted, but in the moment it can still like hit you in the gut in a way that works.
But I think for me, it was so much more effective in the first game because I think that they do have the same kind of cheese tone, but I think it works in the first game because it happens much more rarely. Whereas in this game, it was like every fucking cutscene you had a different thing. Whereas in the first game, it was like you have when the daughter dies, you have when Sarah dies, right? And then you have the first time Joel calls Ellie baby girl, which is like on paper like the fucking cheesiest thing in the world. But like at the time, it was like, oh my God, it's his daughter again. And then at the end when he like saves her, right? And her being like, what'd you do? Like that's dramatic. That's melodramatic, I think. But I think it's effective and it works because they're like 3 emotional beats and you have just built them up over a long period of time. That's still not 30 hours. Whereas this is like every fucking sequence is like, she's pregnant, but she's pregnant. You roll her over and you open the jacket and she's like huge. And like,
some of that
they're fighting and then they like are holding hands and then they start making out. Like it's just too much.
I felt that the intro sequence of Abby's half of the game was that to a T, really, because like they built the WLF up like they were the worst people in the world for the entirety of the game up to that point, and then the second you take over as her, it's like they have a kindergarten, they have a garden in the middle of this arena, you know, like
it's burrito day,
right?
Look at that little dog you met. Remember Bear? Look at him, he plays fetch.
Wonderful, compassionate group of people, you know, like it was such a like jarring contrast. It was like, come on,
Also, okay, this is a question that I am asking as a young person who hasn't had a baby and hasn't been around pregnant people much. I know that pregnant people can do a lot and like they should have autonomy in what they can do. But like, why is this hugely pregnant woman like going out into like places where like people are shooting?
Zone?
Yes, like a war zone.
Yeah,
like, is that weird for me? I don't know. I was like, this doesn't fully track for me, but maybe that's just how it was.
So I think there's I think that I had less of a problem with than like Dina going from like 0 to like 150% morning sickness.
Yes, I agree.
In like 5 minutes. All she had to do was say the word "I'm pregnant," and then suddenly she's like down and out.
She was completely incapacitated. Like with the Mel stuff, I just took it as like it was a sign of her kind of hard-headedness of like she didn't want to give up on the group, you know, she wanted to keep contributing, maybe
fair enough.
Past the point where it was.
And I also could interpret, like, I was also fine with her going after Owen, I think is his name. Was it Owen?
Yeah.
Her going after Owen because it's more like, well, she's taking a risk. Although I did have an issue with like, here's like a 2-day long journey of Abby to get to Owen's aquarium, and like Owen's already there hanging out. And it's like clearly he goes back and forth from here. How is there not like an underground trail or something?
The travel in that game is weird. Like they're traveling across the country half the time, right? And like who knows what the hell happened between, you know, whatever they are, Oklahoma and Seattle, and it's like
I get it. I just took that to mean that people naturally kind of cluster in, you know, a small number of enclave. Like I assume like 98% of the landscape is completely barren of people. Like,
but maybe, but like, you know, there's just some stuff where it's like, you know, and it's always the last 5 feet. It's like, you know, it's like delivery stuff. The last 5 feet is where the real action happens, right? So like, yeah, you're right. Like getting to the aquarium from the WLF base was like the death of 100 people. Where I thought they do some interesting things with the travel, which is, oh my God, we got to get all the way across the city. All right, buckle up. Here we go. Oops, I fell in the water. Now I'm like 3/4 of the way there, or I'm knocked out, and now I'm going to start at this other place. But going back to the pregnancy stuff, I thought they that to me was probably some of that most ham-fisted stuff of like, all right, Dina's pregnant, I get it, okay. Oh no, now Mel's pregnant, and like I thought Dina was gonna have some kind of a toxicity like with the pregnancy, because she was like feverish and she was like,
I thought she was infected.
I mean, I've met people who that's interesting. I've met people who have gotten very sick from pregnancies, so like whatever. But I think also like they mentioned Mel's pregnancy like way early in, so when it was like revealed she was pregnant, it's like duh, like they brought that up in the first second.
I think that was intended to be Ellie discovering she was pregnant.
I know, but I feel like it should have been like a big thing for us to be like, shit, Ellie killed a pregnant.
I know.
But it's like, duh, you knew that was gonna happen.
But you killed her in the neck with a knife, in the neck and the knife.
I don't know.
Yeah, some of the neck shots I thought were them just trying to like goose up the group. I mean, I think it's important to remember this is supposed to be a horror game, right? Like this is like a kind of zombie horror game, right? It's not supposed to be a lighthearted romp. It's not supposed to be. I think at its foundation, The Last of Us is kind of a horror movie with kind of emotional trappings on top. So the kind of gratuitous stuff with the intestines spilling out and, zombie stuff happening and the big zombie made of smaller zombies, which was very funny to me. It was great. Speaking of that, I thought the underneath the hospital with Abby was really great. I also thought the abandoned big apartment building in Seattle was also very good. I like that area as well.
Was it the hotel where you had to like climb down?
The one where it's like bombed out in the middle and you have to kind of be careful. That was a really, really well done sequence.
I thought that was a cool set piece. I thought the Abby's fear of heights was interesting, if not fully explored.
Yeah.
I was also like, they had that moment where she's like walking across the beach. Yeah. It's like the crane, she's walking across it. But it was like fucking foggy as shit. It's like, let me see how high you are. I know eventually the fog clears, but it's like, why weren't you?
First thing I did was walk off it. I got up there and then I just held to the left and walked off of it. I needed to know what would happen. She's like, I was like, shouldn't have gone, Abby. I hate heights too, and it's terrible.
Meanwhile, I love that Lev was constantly cracking wise. Like, are you scared? Are you okay?
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah. Dude, that part was good. I thought the stuff with Lev was probably my favorite stuff in the game. Yeah. I thought that character, he was like very much a needed voice in that game when you're with Abby. Like I actually think Yara might be my favorite character in the game, but I thought the moments running around with Lev added a dynamic, made Abby seem more interesting just because there's somebody else to play off of. Where I think the Dina and Ellie stuff, while interesting, didn't develop Ellie's character as much. Where I think the Abby and Lev stuff, I mean, it was very intentional, right? This is Abby's kind of turn. She has something else to care about, and now she has something. It felt like in the beginning of the game, she has nothing to lose. She's lost everything, and now she has something to fight for. Where Ellie never gets that back, but is she getting that back with Dina? Clearly not, because she leaves again, right? I really thought, I mean, how many times first ending is what? When Abby storms into as you're playing as Ellie and Abby shoots Ellie, right? And you're like, oh, this isn't over. Okay, now we're going to go through all of Abby's thing. And then it's probably the second time is, I thought it was going to kind of end after you're captured by the scars. And I thought that was going to be some big thing. And
when you first switched to Abby, I assumed this was like, it's like, what is this, like a 20-minute epilogue? You're going to play something.
Yeah, I expected it to be like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And even once you got to the aquarium is where I expected it to end. Like, okay, we got to the aquarium. We're going to see like, she's just got to the aftermath of Ellie. And then it was like, no. You had this whole weird sequence. And then you had to literally backtrack. You had to turn around and do the exact same thing you just did.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are two things I've been wanting to talk about since I finished this game. One of these things is how disappointed I am that we didn't see an infected shark, because this whole time I thought there was going to be a shark attack. How much visuals of a shark? Oh, it's Lev's favorite animal. It's a shark. You go through a shark mouth. There's like a shark a fossil that you throw the ball through to play with Alice. And then like when Abby and Owen in like the first aquarium flashback, they pop their heads up through like the little bubble and like, oh, look, it's a seal. I was thinking like, all right, I'm going to fight a shark. Here it comes. We saw a zebra earlier. I'm going to fight a fucking shark. And it never came. That was my biggest disappointment in the game. I honestly God thought there'd be like a fungus shark.
I wish there was zombie shark. Yeah. Can you imagine a shark with a bunch of mushrooms coming out of its head, clicking in the water?
I mean, sharks are already pretty much zombies, so I don't know. No offense to sharks. I love sharks. I love all the sharks. What's your second thing?
how much of a sap I was when the first day in Seattle, when you get to the music store and like when a weird insight into my life. You know how every couple has a song. My partner and our song is "Take on Me" by Aha. And then like when Ellie starts playing it, I'm like, God damn it! This is getting to me. Like I'm feeling it. And then like I start doing the weird like you've taken one semester of a philosophy class, so now you're like overanalyzing everything. And then like I looked at the lyrics of "Take on Me" closer, and then like it's for me it was whatever. Maybe like I'm digging way too deep into it, but then I started thinking like Ellie was foreshadowing she was going to leave at the very end the whole time. I'll be gone in a day or two.
What are the lyrics?
Like I'll be gone in a day or two, and then the other lyric is I'll be stumbling away, slowly learning that life is okay. Like that's when she's walking away, man, that's from the house.
Pretty intentional. I would assume every choice made is intentional, right? They didn't just like be like, "Oh, I like the song, so I'll put it in." So I'm sure the lyrics are.
Oh man,
I thought that was a really nice, effective moment. I thought it was kind of interesting that was off to the side in the music store. So the reason
I remember being there and I remember playing the guitar, but honestly, every time I picked up the guitar, I would just go, and it was like not as emotionally effective because like every time I was just like.
I wonder, did you not get the full like her full performance playing the whole song? Because you have to play the first like 6 chords or something before it'll like go into the cutscene.
It did. I got all those like cutscene songs, and then I don't remember the cutscene though.
It's Dina is like sitting down next to Abby. There she's up in the second floor of the music store, right?
I thought it was really interesting that was missable. Like that's off to the side, and you don't, you don't have to go in there. Like that whole area. Like I was a little disappointed because that part is in that open downtown Seattle area at the very beginning. Like I was disappointed that more of the game wasn't structured that way. Because I enjoyed that.
I also enjoyed.
I really enjoyed just that roaming around, like kind of doing stuff in whatever order, like finding things organically, and like that was a good example of like you totally could have missed that unless you bothered to go in that music store and look around. And I wish more of the game had been that way.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that. Missed that part.
But also, what happened in this cutscene?
Oh, it's just Ellie plays "Take on Me" for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I probably did watch it, just forget. But I do think like the pacing is, I think one of my biggest, aside from like some of the story stuff, is one of my bigger issues with it. Because I do think if it was more like that open area where it's like, okay, I know when I'm going to go into like a combat encounter and it's, I'm going to discover a little bit of story through that, but like speak to my traveling partner in the middle of it. I don't know. It's so much of the game felt like, okay, I'm getting into an area, I'm going to clear it out of items and people, and like, that's the perpetual loop. And then at the end is a cutscene to the next area. But it felt like, here's like 5 minutes of combat with like an hour of looting. And like not all of the looting was even like story looting. It was like a lot of like, well, here's a bottle of alcohol. Here's a rag.
Here's a baseball card.
One thing I will say in its favor is I felt like the moment-to-moment environment design was extremely well done in this game. I feel like every person's like picked through apartment that you went through felt really different, and like you kind of get a sense of like
the kitchens don't. I remember.
Yeah, sure. Yes, there are some prefab houses. I don't know.
And everybody apparently loves the same safe. Everybody got to run. Sure. Everybody's got a waist high safe that they love. But you can also dial in however you want. You can go left and right as many times as you want.
I know. I felt like a lot of the clicking, which I did towards Abby's storyline, because I was like, I'm sure I'm finding this paper somewhere, but I'm not as. I'm not going to memorize them anymore.
I felt like a lot of the scenery had a lot of good personality to it. Yes. Like you got a sense of who had lived there and like what they were like just from looking around.
Okay, this is fully just me headcanon, but I was a little bit disappointed when you went to like the rich area and like the epilogue where you're like going through all the like California houses. I was like, oh, I want them to be like celebrity houses, and I want to play celebrity zombie. Like I was fully expecting to go into the houses, and you know how she likes those like fake Twilight movies. I was expecting her to go in there and then like see the memorabilia and like a statue or like a thing and be like, oh my god, the zombie I just fought, that was that character I loved. Like, wouldn't that be cool?
That would have been fun.
I think that epilogue. They should have one more epilogue part 2, where you play as some completely random person going through Abby and Dina's house and find a note from Dina that's like, hey, Ellie and Dina's house, where you like find a note that's like, had to leave, the whatevers are coming, and it's just some like, and it's a throwaway thing as you're just looting duct tape and whatever from Abby's house, because like at the end of the game, that's all it is, right? It should just be Abby left a couple of bullets in the safe for you. Here, the combination is the date that you fucking walked out on me, and then and just some random being like, oh, I guess this is just some other random's house. Also, they had everybody has such nice houses, man. Nobody lives in a.
I really enjoy that.
Have you been to Santa Barbara?
I don't know. I mean, the whole game, I was like, man, I guess when you could pick whatever house you want, you pick the nice one. Don't pick the shithole house.
I didn't enjoy seeing Jackson, like how they did their plumbing in all the bathrooms. I thought it was fascinating to see, like, oh, they like made it work. They didn't have any kind of plumbing weird setup in Ellie and Dina's house. So I was like, oh, do they actually have plumbing? I don't know how farmhouse work that they could. Like,
well, she's washing the dishes.
I know it seems like they have water. I
just thought of this listening to you guys talk about it, but I enjoy how much you get little glimpses of how these people have made life work on an ongoing basis in this shitty world. Like from the patrols and how structured they are and how much like redundancy they have built into that setup, and like everybody's got responsibilities around raising crops, and like we have to go clear these businesses of infect. You know what I mean? Like they had a lot of like rules and structure.
I also like the idea.
I would have enjoyed the game more if it was like you spent more time in Jackson, or you spent more time in those places of just like being domestic, because I think that was the closest stuff that mirrored our own life but was different, which I think would be interesting to explore.
I like the idea that the Seraphites built a whole sky bridge system without like the WR knowing.
Or like it's scaffolding or anything. It's just like one plank at a time. I don't know how that thing is. Somebody's played Polybridge there, those Seraphites, because holy cow, that stuff is impressive.
Also with their insistence to just be completely like super vegan and not use any science or whatever to hold everything.
They have that thing, which I kind of appreciated, but it was a little like, okay, we're like, there was something that Abby brought up to Lev, and he was like, she was like, but you guys use this thing, and Lev was like, well, we make exceptions, and it's like, all right.
I think what he said was like they bend the rules more if you're a soldier or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
One of my favorite bits with Lev is when Lev pretty much guilt trips Abby into finding a gas mask for him. It's like, I'll die here if you leave me, or you die. Like, I'm stuck.
Also, it was like the first thing when he put it on, when Lev put it on, was like, oh man, I wonder if that thing stinks. It's been on a corpse for like 20 years. Like, don't tell Lev that. It was just like sitting on this decaying corpse.
My thing is also like, the way the spores work, like they're airborne, but like they're gonna be stuck in the mask. You're really putting it on your face.
Yeah, like I noticed that like characters would come out of spores with their masks on, and they'd take the masks off, and then like immediately start hugging each other. It's like, aren't you covered with spores all over?
Or just like the idea that like, well, you can only catch spore virus if you see it. Like everybody's just like, I see spores in here. Let's put the mask on and be like, man, it's just stuff you cannot see.
Yeah, like aren't you already breathing it by the time you see it?
There's a lot of weird. The rules of this world don't work sometimes and don't work. The note stuff. My favorite note, and I wish I was able to explore this a little bit more. My favorite note was in one of the apartments. I think it's with Abby. When you're on your way to that whole area with Lev, is there's the two neighbors who are riding back and forth, and you're like, oh my gosh, he's like, you made this bread, and like, oh, let's check it out, and like, I've been on the roof, and like, I'm getting out of here, but then you go to the apartment next door, and I don't think there's a way to ever go in there.
Off, yeah.
I know. I was also disappointed. I want to see like their side of it.
Or like, did they get out? Are they in there? Are there two zombies? You should have at least heard like somebody banging on the wall, like zombies, and be like, oh man, it's bad in there. So yeah, I think the world building, that stuff was good. A lot of notes. There's a lot of notes.
I love notes. More notes.
Yeah, I didn't mind them because they were also well written. Like they were pretty very effective. Like a lot of games use those badly, but this game uses them very well. Yeah.
I think they should have. If you found the code, they should just put the safe code in for you. I think having to memorize the safe code was silly. I would like to know if they shuffle around the pickups, like the holsters and the upgrade books, for people if you miss them.
I've seen people say like, oh, I missed it. I know that I missed it for whatever reason, and then I found it in a safe later.
Okay, so they do shuffle someone around. My problem with just don't give Abby collectible. Just don't do it. Like there's enough collectibles with Ellie, and like then to do the coins, but then to do like the state quarters and have one that seems like it's from 1978. seems like a weird thing, and they're not the actual state quarters, but they're referencing those.
Wait, they're not?
In park. No, they're different. I looked up the Virginia one.
Why wouldn't they just use the real ones?
I think they're copyrighted.
Yeah,
it's
copyrighted.
I assumed they were like public property.
Well, the designs probably are not.
Oh, you think maybe the designs were done by private individuals that retain the copyright or something? Yeah,
I would think so. I would think you just can't. I don't know. I mean, you can't necessarily do a full representation of like money sometimes in games, also, right? Sure. Like, I don't know. So anyway, it was a weird thing where it's just like, for a game that's so like pitch perfect with its reality, or tries to justify it even when they're wrong, seemed like a weird thing. Maybe it was a centennial date on it or something. I don't know. I'll give them that kind of doubt on it. But the bigger thing was like, as soon as I saw there was a new collectible, I was like, fuck, I can't. Like, I'm already halfway through this game, and like, are you gonna make me start over with collectibles?
I know, it's like bigger different. Also, my frustration with the coins is like with Abby or with Ellie's like cards, they at least have some like flavor text. They are not a thing I can get in my real world. The coins, I got a pocket full of them right now. Like, they're not interesting.
Kind of boring, sure.
Like, no offense, Vinny, but coin collecting is fucking boring as shit.
No, coin collecting is great, but I suspect
I believe it's interesting.
Super fucking easy. Like, like just smash open one of those soda machines. Nobody, you remember when you do the thing in the vault and you're surrounded by gold bars, and you're like, wow, and like money, and you're like, wow, good, money's useless. Like, poor Abby, you'd just be like shoveling coins in her pocket, being like, collection done. Like, why is she finding one fucking coin in the grass behind a house? Just go to a bank and open up a vault. Like, there's literally there are just rolls of quarters that you'd be like, go break into an old coin shop and just shovel them into your pocket and be like,
also like the heaviest collectible in the world. Here's a pocket full of metal.
Or like, you should
the noisiest.
Throw the coin at some point. So yeah, I don't know. I just was bummed out that there was another collectible, because I had tried with Ellie to, you try to search every corner of every place. And at that point feeling like, oh man, I got to start. It's like a little deflating. I was also deflated that the tech tree or the skill tree would start over again for Abby, but that actually seemed to go pretty quickly.
They accelerate. They give you a ton of materials there.
They shovel pills in front of your face. Like I guess you're on, I don't know what the pills and learning is. It's just a weird thing, but it's supposed to be like amphetamines. Like, what are you supposed to be?
She's just studying.
It's brain force.
Another thing that what you're talking about reminded me of, like, I feel like sometimes also the way they made you search in the game would like really cut the tension for me in a lot of like major story moments where it's like, oh, it's supposed to be sort of speedy, or like, oh God, I just saw something tense. Like, I just saw Tommy in a truck running away. I should better go after him real quick. I hope they didn't get him. And then like going into an area and be like, let me open every drawer.
I mean there's literally a verbal cue in every single encounter when you've killed the last person. It's like, oh, now I can search. Like, I appreciated that from a gameplay standpoint, but it's a little bit contrived.
I still wound up crouching down and like, using listen mode, even if they said it was safe, because I didn't trust the game. Yeah, it was. I think I'm just broken that way.
The music would stop, and as soon as she'd be like, oh, I guess that's all of them, I was up and like sprinting around.
I know.
They did the same thing in Seattle, or the when you're on the horse with Dina, also, which I thought was very good, of like, I guess that's everything in this building, which is like, oh thank you. Yes, moving on.
Yeah, where she like checks it off in a little like map. I also enjoyed that. Yeah.
I thought that horse part was fun. It was
horse
neat.
Dies. Shimmer dies.
Yeah.
Oh, Shimmer. I like fucking forgot about Shimmer at this point.
They just shoot that horse, don't they?
No, you step on a bomb.
Yeah. I
think right. Yeah. Right when the WLF finds you.
She never drew Shimmer in her journal.
Does she not?
I think
maybe she does. Maybe she might. But I want like a big R.I.P. Shimmer.
I thought that journal was really well done. I thought.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of.
It was no Red Dead 2 journal.
No, I mean that's the gold standard of in-game journals for sure. But
I stopped checking the journal after a while. I don't know.
There's a lot of there's some character building stuff in there.
Yeah, maybe I should go check it.
And some good world building actually. Like some of the, like you were talking about, some of the getting from like Wyoming to Seattle type stuff. Like
I did read some of that.
They fill in some gaps there. I thought the part about Las Vegas was really chilling. Because she talks about them going by Las Vegas and the walls are still up from the military occupation. And,
yes, I did read that.
And you can hear the den of like thousands of infected inside, and she's just like, oh, those poor people that were trapped in there.
And you also get some stuff about like how she's working through. She draws like Abby or Joel with like the eyes crossed out.
I thought the eyes stuff was pretty neat.
It's weird, creepy, but yes. I like that Joel likes Taylor guitars, and that's a good sounding guitar. I like that. See, much like the coins, you go and you pick the best fucking guitar there. Like, why are you wasting your time with any crap? You just go get a Martin or you get a Taylor, and and I don't know. I think Taylor must have been a sponsor.
Yeah, dude, you can totally buy that guitar. They made a Last of Us 2 guitar.
Wow.
But it's like $2,500.
Every acoustic guitar in that game is a Taylor, which is like, well, you guys are old. You might think you have it bad, but you're actually very lucky.
That was definite product placement.
How many gamers do you think they sent that guitar?
I don't think any. I think that's a little too pricey. That's a little too bespoke.
Yeah, but like, how many PlayStations do they send out?
But PS4s are a dime a dozen. Like, that's a little too fancy even for modern influencer culture.
There's got to be a gamer out there.
Also, how many of them are going to appreciate that fine instrument?
A great question, probably a lot. But I'm just saying, I feel like somebody must have gotten a press packet. At least
for sure.
With that
somebody probably did, but they're not the type of person to post a photo of it on Twitter. Is my guess.
Fair enough. I'm just curious.
But if you're listening to this, I love The Last of Us 2. It's one of my favorite games ever. I only had a guitar. I thought that was so. In all seriousness, no, I did really like the game as someone who doesn't finish that many games anymore, especially very long games. This did propel me through, even though there were points where I was like, I gotta put this down.
It is the most page turner of a video game story that as I've played in years. Like, my girlfriend watched me play like every minute of the fucking 37 hours or whatever I spent on it. And like both of us were just wrapped the entire time. It was just like, I have to keep going. I have to know what's going to happen next.
I couldn't keep track of the days. So when it would be like Abby or day 2, and I was like, there was a part of me that almost cheered out loud when I knew the timelines were about to sync up. And I was there on like day 1 because I thought it was gonna be a 20-minute sequence too. It'd be like, oh, is this the part where she goes in the theater and finds Ellie? It's like, oh no, like Ellie's like this doofus is still alive. Like, Owen, like every time she walked into the aquarium, I was like, oh, and hope Owen's dead. And like you walk in there, and you're like, oh, come on. I also spent so much time. There was only one thing in the game I spent like 10 to 15 minutes puzzling out. And it was that part where you're sneaking back into the aquarium and have to throw the electrical cord through the roof.
Right.
I was like, why the hell did you plug this thing in? It doesn't reach anywhere. And I think might have been one of the spots where I was like, I'm just going to put this controller down. I'm done for a bit.
One of the things that took me out of it is the fact that Ellie and Dina would leave all the lights and electricity running in the theater all the time.
That drove me crazy.
It's like, why wouldn't you just turn it off?
Not only because it was wasteful, but also like they're gonna fucking see the lights on. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna come right to you.
Yeah, I will say, to go back a little bit, this was not quite the page turner for me as I think it was for you. I was so ready for it to be over.
Well, I was too at a point for sure.
But in a way that I was like, I do not give a shit what happens to Abby. I know what's going to happen is her friends are going to die. They're not going to go to fucking San Diego. They're going to get killed by Ellie. Just like make it happen. I know what's going to happen. I
super disagree that I didn't give a shit about Abby. Like, that's the thing. The one thing, like, whatever else you want to criticize about this game. I liked Abby,
but I didn't give a shit about most of her storyline.
There are obviously a lot of
shit about her end goal, but not so much with like her fucking love triangle. So,
and all here's the thing that I think this game does that is an unmitigated success. Like, whatever else you want to criticize about it, and it's like kind of something that probably only a game or like maybe a novel could do, is to take the what is ostensibly the primary antagonist, like person that you were supposed to be against, and like completely invert your feelings on that character by the end of the game. Like, I came out of, I don't know about you guys, but I came out of the Joel murder sequence fucking lusting for vengeance. I'm like, I want these motherfuckers to drown in their own blood. I was like, we are going to find these people and murder them.
I think I'm with you, Brad. That way. And I hear you.
And once the confrontation in the theater happened the first time, I was like, all right, let's do this. Like, this is the moment. We've been working up to this the whole game. And then, of course, you have the dawning realization, like, oh, the game's only half over. Fuck. But like, it hit me like halfway through Abby's arc, and this is like the one reason I would argue that her half of the game needed to be that long. It hit me somewhere around, I think, like the Skybridge part. I was like, oh, right, Ellie. Like I completely forgot who Ellie was and why she was in Seattle and any of that stuff. Like, I had gotten absorbed enough in that character's story and like came to appreciate her motivation and the redemptive arc that she was undertaking.
I don't know if this speaks about the type of person that I am, but when you had the confrontation with Ellie when you're playing as Abby, like hiding from her, because as a player, I knew that Dina was somewhere in the back. I immediately ran there because I thought that's what the game was supposed to make you do. It's like, all right, I'm going to go get the pregnant lady. I'm going to get her because she took my pregnant lady.
I mean, that's kind of where that whole thing kind of ends up, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, what did she say? She's like, good.
I know.
Like,
Even better.
Abby, hey.
Like, just to take a character that is that despicable up front and like make you like, you know, like I don't know where I land on this, but I see a decent number of people saying like, yeah, I identified more with Abby than Ellie by the end of the game. Like that, like she was more sympathetic to me than Ellie by far.
Yeah.
I fully
I kind of wanted to choke out Ellie.
I fully hear you, but I think by the time they showed Abby and her dad in that like zebra sequence, I knew exactly what they were doing, and it just made the rest not nearly that effective. Like I hear you, I cared about Abby in the sense of like, yeah, she's a full character. I'm interested in what she has to say, but also so much for storyline I felt was pretty stupid. That like I was affected by the end when you like go to the end and you have to see her like hanging on this pole and like she's clearly lost a lot of weight and she's like been through some fucking shit. Like that was the most impactful part of Abby for me.
I thought it was.
But the rest, I was like, I care about Ellie and Abby is fine. And like, I don't agree with Ellie, but like, I know where Abby's storyline is eventually going to go. And I know I'm reaching this point. The rest felt manipulative for me. So it took me out of it, I think, for a lot of it.
It was definitely manipulative. It is no doubt. I mean, what you're saying, Brad, is very intentional by kind of elevating Abby and just keeping pushing Ellie to make bad choices. They kind of split that very intentionally. I think for me, I was not against Abby. Like Joel's kind of a piece of shit, like to everybody but Ellie. You know, in the first game, he makes a lot of bad choices, what I think are bad choices. I think he's very protective of Ellie, but they go out of their way also to make it clear that Tommy and Joel have done some bad stuff in their past. So like when Abby and that crew,
he's kind of redeemed himself though, right? Like he's become a father figure. Well, yeah, but he's also become a part of this community. Like he's obviously like a pillar of Jackson.
I don't know.
Jesse has like a lot of respect for Joel.
Yeah, like Jesse, like they save Abby without hesitation and like. You know,
yes, and they were like so quick to be like, "You guys should come back to Jackson."
Right, like he's clearly he has changed by his exposure to these decent people. You know?
I feel like Tom is a little bit more like, "Let's take him back," and Joel's a little bit like, "Oh." Fuck
Actually, the thing I thought was really discordant with Tommy is that up front, right after Joel, his own brother, has been murdered, he's the one that's pushing back against Ellie. Wanting to go get revenge, but then at the end of the game, he's like, "No, we have to finish this."
Oh, I think
I interpreted that as like a ruse, so he could go alone.
Yeah, that's what I interpreted.
Okay,
which is why he went early.
Yeah, like, hey, just give me a day, and then he's like, I'm out. But yeah, I think after it was almost like after Abby had killed Joel, I think I knew where the game was going to go because I was pretty sure you're going to play the rest of the 40 hours of this game. But I was like, okay, well, they're square. Like Joel did a lot of bad stuff. These people clearly are have an axe to grind with something from the first game. Looks like everybody's square. Ellie, go live your life. Go raise some crops. You're good.
Whatever he did in the past, though, I can't give them a pass when they tortured him to death. You know what I mean? It's like if they had like.
It is a little sadistic.
She flat out said you don't get to rush this, and then she slowly beat him to death. You know, like that's like that is reprehensible.
I also think for me, it's different when it's like, oh shit, we stumbled upon this dude way out in the wild, let's fucking kill him, versus like we came to his home to kill him. Like that is like a level of intensity that like Ellie only did immediately afterwards, whereas this woman waited like years to do it, you know?
Yeah, but then like Ellie goes out there and is like systematically like
absolutely
murdering everybody. But that's intentional again, like you said. They're intentionally going out to show that like these are people who are driven by maybe too similar of a story, like on the nose, like father figure, and in this case, father literally killed. What drives a person for revenge, and then who can recover and who can not. And I think while I wasn't like sympathetic to Abby, it definitely didn't. I don't think I had as much of it was more when I think my character turn with Abby was more of, when you learn that she joined up with the WLF as a bigger group once the Fireflies disbanded. Like, she's not necessarily all in as a founding member. She's kind of absorbed because these Fireflies needed a place to go. And that was more of like, okay, maybe she could distance herself from this group, which is paramilitary group, which seems like it is run by a monster. The whole Scar WLF thing, war, is an interesting backdrop, and a kind of, they do go into it enough to get like, there's a truce and it's broken and here's why. And so I think they do give enough background there, but it paints that world as someplace that is driven. The United States is driven into this factionalized mess. That,
I mean, that turf war in Seattle is just a broader version of what the Abby Ellie relationship, right? It's just a cycle of escalating vengeance that never ends and just makes everything worse, right?
That's right. So I think it is definitely, it makes it seem like this place is doomed anyway, doomed regardless of the outcome. But I was kind of on Abby's side before you switch over. Like, I think when you're playing as Ellie, you're right, they keep painting the WLF as the worst of the worst, like everybody is a monster, until you immediately switch over to Abby and it's all Manny's like high-fiving and like we're all having a good time, and Nora's saving lives and like, oh my gosh. And like,
I don't know if maybe I'm getting too hung up on this, but like if Joel's death had been a clean kill, I would be much more with you on that, but the overly sadistic nature of that really
again is intentional, right? They want you to believe that this is a torture and brutal killing. And yes, you're right. I mean, like it gets to the point
where even some of her friends are like, enough is enough. Yeah. Like, fucking let it stop. But then again, that's
letting Ellie go. Like, I don't know, if they were the Rattlers, for example, they would just fucking killed Ellie too. You know what I mean? Like that. I think, I don't know. I think I'm more with Vinny, where like I think it was so clear that like Ellie was making a lot of the wrong choices and was maybe taking things too far, that like I didn't need 8 hours of Abby's storyline to feel empathy for Abby.
And she definitely comes across as a character who, again, I feel like she found something else to fight for and live for and wanted a fresh start. And I think Ellie comes across as somebody who also wanted that, but couldn't have it. Like, she was denied that in a way that became a sympathetic character by proxy of that, right? Of like, she cannot find peace, and it seems like Abby is somehow able to make peace, though Abby being the one, I don't know, Abby doesn't seem to hold that grudge of Ellie literally murdering all her friends that much. It seems like she got the revengeance out for the killing of her dad. That was the big one. And then after that, like, you killed all my friends. And it's like, well, I'm gonna go move on. Like, I can live with this.
Like, she's got Lev at that point. Like, she's found another reason to exist that is a much more like positive, constructive reason.
And I think again, just Ellie not being able to find that with JJ and Dina is kind of sad. Like she can't find that peace. She can't move on is a kind of maybe the sadder part of that whole tale.
One of the things that became headcanon to me, and I this may be just another thing that's just outright symbolism, like shoving it in your face, is how much like there's a moth with Ellie and that she's just like drawn to the flame and that she just can't like let go of it. And then like with Abby, she's just obsessed with like finding the Fireflies again, or that there's like the Fireflies are out somewhere. So then Ellie is just attracted to the fire that or like the light or whatever that of vengeance, and then like of Abby wanting to be a Firefly. And then when I think when Ellie plays the guitar at the empty house and she leaves the guitar there with like the moth on it, like I just took that. It's like, all right, well, I think I'm done now. Like, I know I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, she let Joel like to rest, she's finally letting go. But like, I took that as like her kind of like leaving that mentality, like finally coming to terms with it, of like, okay, I've lost everything.
Yeah, I don't think there was there was nothing positive about that moment at all.
Yeah, I took that as like, I lost a lot of my hand. I came and do this thing that was my release before, that like Joel passed on to me. Like I even lost that part of myself trying to get Joel back.
I'm surprised. I feel like the response to specifically the guitar thing, I've lost 2 fingers and I can no longer play the song he taught me, maybe is the cheesiest thing in the game to me. And I'm surprised, like, mostly the response I've seen to it has been really positive. Like, it was really tasteful and worked for people. It was very on the cheesy is not the right word. It felt incredibly on the nose.
Sure.
It's funny because throughout that whole game, the running, I would have this conversation with Bacalar while I was playing. I know he must have known about how every time she kills a clicker, she's just putting her hand over the clicker's mouth, and like she's just going to lose a finger the entire time, the entire game. Like that's where they keep biting her neck out. So for her to finally lose a finger to Abby is a joke's on me. I can't remember both of them off. Man,
I know it was like a real bite.
I knew she had one of them, but then both of them, man. And also, this is an Uncharted thing too. She got the puncture wound from the tree and bleeding out through her fingers, but is somehow able to hike it back to the Midwest and is okay.
I know. I fully expected her to get there and her to like see Abby and Lev and like be like, holy shit, they just went through like literal hell. I will save them, and then like bleed out is kind of what I was expecting to happen. Like
I thought Lev was going to kill Ellie at that point.
Oh really? I fully thought it was going to be like a spoiler alert, Children of Men thing where like she was, you know what I mean? Like that was very Children of Men the end of that game.
To me at that point there was no redemptive way for this game to end other than for everybody to just fucking let it go.
Right.
Like that's what I was expecting.
In that last fight, after you've been like, after Ellie's like, just go. There are way too many like pull the camera up close to Ellie and not be able to see the periphery. Where I totally thought somebody was going to come up behind her and just smoke her, either Lev or Abby, in a way that I was like kind of wincing, ready, like waiting for the shot to go off. But it didn't happen. And to their credit, it didn't happen because I think that would have either changed the entire tone of the Abby arc of if she were like, this was the only way to end this, was to stop this cycle, or but I was glad they kind of pushed off and went.
Actually, the other thing I thought might happen is that Ellie would just go through with it. She actually would just kill Abby, and that only afterwards would she realize that it had done nothing for her. That it was an empty. Empty
I think by the time that she was fighting Abby, I think I kind of maybe would have enjoyed that more of a moral ending. Like I like Abby just being like, I'm done here. Like I've gone through shit worse than you at this point. Like just let me.
I did want to mention, I thought it was a pretty nice trick of like visual character design that Abby's braid and her physique were such like defining characteristics of her design. And then for her to have lost both of those things in that last scene. Because they even like this, and this was maybe a little over the top. They actually, there is another woman up on a different stake that does have a long blonde braid, and it was a little bit.
I went to them like 3 times, being like, I can't trigger the prompt.
Like that, I think that kind of weird misdirection almost undermined that scene a little bit to me. But yeah, to have her be so diminished visually from what she was, I felt like was a good like visual cue for how much shit she had gone through, and also just how like pathetic Ellie's quest for vengeance was at that point. It's like, really, like you're really going to beat this pathetic wretch to death who has suffered through all of this. Like,
I mean, really? they're both in pretty bad shape by that point.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's just like, come on. Like I was angry. I was angry at Ellie through that whole last confrontation where I was just like, stop.
I kind of think that's intentional as well. I think you're clearly supposed to be like, you've taken it too far. On a less serious note, that last sequence in the game with the Rattlers, which again, they're just, I almost feel bad for them because they're just disposable bad guys.
They're almost like cartoonish bad guys. They're
and they're kind of bumbling.
I know that's like a fucking Guy Fieri like bad guy.
And then they have and they're all wearing the stupid helmets, so you can't do the headshots. So like that just led to me being like, all right, shotgun to the knees on everybody, which was just me hiding behind a box the entire time, waiting for people to be like, she's over the and then somebody would run over and be like, and there's just piles of people with like no legs.
I use the trip mines so often.
Holy cow, those trip mines are the worst. Like they're the best and the worst because you can make them like nobody's business because they have so many bottles around. Yeah, and you just start planting them around, and if you just plant them a couple of feet in front of the other one, like it'll blow up. Somebody will come check it, and then they'll blow up.
You know what? You think that's bad? I use them mostly on dogs. Because once a dog caught your scent, you could guarantee it was going to follow exactly where you had been. So you just drop a bomb and then move away, and it's guaranteed.
But I don't think the dogs explode. No, I don't think they explode.
I don't think they.
I think their model stays the same, which because there was one part where I hit a bunch of guys, and you walk through and it's just half a corpse, half a corpse, half a corpse.
It's a really gory, like kind of,
and then a full dog.
Damage model.
Like the dog is fine. Though if you this is just very gamey. If you headshot somebody, and the first thing I did was look at him through the scope at the the headshot wound. It's just kind of like a jelly decal on their face a lot of the times.
There's a lot of dismemberment though.
Oh yeah,
I mean the shotgun knew they were cool.
Did you guys?
This is
go ahead.
Oh, I just wish that the game explored like the fact that Ellie's immune. Like I think that is the one thing I do maybe want like some answers about, or like are there more immune people? Like because I do think that she says a line in the game.
There are not.
I
mean that's the whole thing.
Too true, where she's like, you stripped, like now me being immune means nothing, and like I think that's true, but in like an unsatisfying way, where like it does mean nothing because like what are we doing with it now, and like maybe that's the whole point, and maybe I'm just not satisfied with that, but I don't know. I wish that was concluded in a more interesting way.
In an alternate universe, in a cornier universe, if I were writing this game as a bad writer, it would have been like Abby finds out Lev is immune and has to make the choice of whether to bring Lev to sacrifice Lev for the vaccine, like make that choice, and that would have been a bad move. Somebody would have had to stop that script from going out, because I kind of like that the only one I thought would have been interesting to be immune was the leader of the Scars. I thought that would have been interesting because they worship her in a way that you're never quite sure why, like what these miracles are, and like how she became this kind of more than human figure. And I feel like having somebody who can survive a zombie attack because they think they're very pious or they're living this lifestyle is something that could inspire people to. I don't know.
To me, we're living in a moment where there are enough examples already of desperation leading to like fanaticism, religious or otherwise. That I did not need any other justification for seeing people act that way.
What was it? They said the infection's inside. They have to let it out or something. Like they're corrupt. The corruption's inside. That's why they gut them all. Or is that just I just need a visual disgusting thing? So let's just make them rip guts out.
I don't remember what the justification was for gutting them.
it was definitely a choice.
That's kind of another example of cartoonishness to some degree.
Yeah. Out of all the torture scenes, I think the one that like I winced at the most was when like the big woman Scar had said clip her wings.
Yes. That was the only moment in the game that I actually averted my eyes from. Like I didn't want to watch that.
Yeah. I watched it, but I was like, ooh. There was also, I think, when Abby was biting Ellie's fingers off, I was like,
yeah, it was kind of gross. Didn't somebody else bite an ear off or something?
Yes, I think so.
That does feel familiar.
I think Abby bites somebody's scars or something.
Trunchbull's ear off.
Yeah,
right.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. Also, she does the fingers in the eyeballs of that.
Also, actually, the in that final fight, the Ellie doing the Saving Private Ryan to Abby of like slowly like forcing the knife into her chest. Was really uncomfortable.
Another gameplay thing that I changed immediately was I just changed all the button prompts to hold instead of push. Yeah. Early on, it was just too confusing. Somebody said I think square is always hold and triangle is tap. Is that what it is? Okay, I just changed it to always be hold. We'd probably wrap up soon, but I think the boss fights I thought were kind of interesting in ways that didn't feel too cheesy. Like they definitely were video gamey. You get all the ammo, you get locked in a room, a big boss comes out, and you got to run around and kill a boss. But it kind of worked for me in escalating the encounter. I think that again the gameplay was great. I think the story. There's an edited version of this that is 12 hours long that I think is even better than this version. I think there's a lot of filler in here that narratively didn't do much for me. That didn't move the needle that much. It's a video game, not a movie, right? And I think it plays like a video game and not a movie. So I think it almost runs opposite Metal Gear, where Metal Gear has tons of cutscenes and too little gameplay, and this almost has there's a happy medium between this and like a Metal Gear game where okay, we'll pull down the cutscenes from Metal Gear and we'll pull down some of the gameplay from that.
So you're saying it's more there's too much game here? Like you could have
too much game almost.
Too much just like traveling from place to place type stuff. Like that I can agree with. That like
do you think towards the end, like there was one sequence when I was in like the Scar village where it was like, oh, I don't think they actually wanted to sneak. I think they wanted to shoot everyone. Where I literally, it like went wrong. I hit someone with a fucking crowbar, and then I like ran out and just ran past everyone. And I had a moment of like, could I have done that for every encounter?
Yeah, there's tons. Like I think most encounters, or a lot of them at least, you can just sneak through and kind of go.
But it wasn't even I snuck through. I like booked it. They all saw me.
I had done that at least twice.
I did that a couple of times, especially towards the end, like a similar thing where it's just like, let's go. And I think sometimes it feels narratively like the correct thing to do of like, we're not trying to alert this whole place and let's book it. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed the first one more, and it has a lot of problems of sequel-itis. And you know, a lot of big games do this where a lot of big franchises do this where they will take the enemy from a first game or something and try to make them compassionate or give them another angle in a sequel or multiple factions, right? And I think at least they didn't make like an infected queen or something where you're like, oh no, the infected are just trying to build society too, man. Like I have to be sympathetic to the infected. So at least it didn't do that. And like a Gears of War or
oh gosh,
you know, like
StarCraft. I agree on the story front. I think the first game has more clarity and focus and is more successful at the thing it's trying to do. Just gameplay wise, I think this is a dramatically better game though. But I agree. Like the story is a little bit broader and like a little more muddled in spots. Even though I think the core through line on a gut level does work very well.
I did not finish that game and then be like, it wasn't in my head. I finished that game and I was like, oh okay, you know, or not. But Last of Us 2, whereas like The Last of Us 1 kind of stuck in my head of like, man, that was, and The Last of Us 2 was like, you know, I finished it. It was like I enjoyed that, but it wasn't challenging in the way that Last of Us 1 was narratively. I felt like they kind of fed, and you didn't have to really kind of
like. I feel like it's telling. It's almost telling that we opened this podcast with starting to get into a discussion about like the morality of the ending of the first game, right? And then the ending of this game, like nobody is conflicted on what it's trying to say or how well it does it.
Yeah, they kind of lay the table out almost to the point where you're like, check please, I'm good. Like I don't need to eat anymore. But what's up next? I don't care.
Actually, the last thing I want to mention before we go, have you guys seen this? So you know the title screen changes.
Yeah.
First of all, I thought it was kind of a neat trick that fucking rowboat is on the title screen the entire game, and you don't know why until the very last scene. I was like, oh, it's that rowboat. But you know how it changes?
I don't know. Oh, yes. It like changes to like the sunny thing with like the circle building, right?
So the thing people were saying, so I took when Abby and Lev go into that building, the address that they're looking for, and they talk to people on the radio, and then they get jumped by the Rattlers.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that, I kind of took that to mean the Rattlers were on the other end of the radio just playing it up to entrap her or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then that title screen looks like that round building, right? They're the Rattler headquarters or whatever. People were saying that they actually like looked up photos of what that building is, and that it's actually like a building on Catalina. I think it was a Catalina Island. Where did the remaining Fireflies on the radio say where they are? People put two and two together with that building. Like that's more misdirection of that building is not the Rattler hideout.
HQ. Okay.
It's some building on the actual island that the Fireflies. So like it seems like some kind of sequel bait or DLC bait of like, oh no, the Abby and Lev actually found the Fireflies. Like they.
But is it? It's not the same Rattler building.
I totally thought it was. I like when the title screen flips, I was like, oh, that's just the Rattler. But that's where the rowboat was left when they got out of there or whatever, you know. But so I haven't verified this, but
okay,
this may be some like Reddit sleuthing or something. But that's what I've been told is that building on the title screen actually implies that there really are more Fireflies and that they did find them.
I mean, they did. They talked to him on the radio.
Well, like I said, though, I thought
that was a misdirection too.
I thought that was the Rattlers just acting it out to try to trap people. But I don't know.
Well, he did. I mean, I guess he does ask like, who's the leader of that?
Like if you listen to what they say, it's all stuff they could easily fake. It's like who was your CO? Oh, him, huh?
Oh yeah, right. He never like verifies the information. There's no like, back and forth verification.
Yes. It's all them asking Abby for information, which she very readily gives because she's obviously.
I did not think that at the time, but I thought at the end of the game, I did not think it was a misdirection at the time. I thought she was really going to find the Fireflies, but it did. At the end of the game, I thought she just went around the corner and was like, I'm not taking this rowboat into the ocean. It's a fucking rowboat.
Right. That's what I thought too. So anyway, I just thought it was weird they put that in there because I don't feel like we need another Last of Us, but that totally feels like a setup for something new or something more.
I could see them doing like Tommy's Days in Seattle as like an additional DLC thing if they wanted to.
The DLC for 1 was really good and like felt not crucial, but like it felt like it added something. You know, it felt like it genuinely added more context to the story. So if they do something like that here, that would not be bad. But I don't think we need a third one of these.
Yeah, I feel like if they were going to do, I would maybe be interested in like Lev and Yara's storyline as something. I feel like more than Tommy's, because I feel like with Left Behind, getting Ellie's storyline, like you come in and meet Ellie and like it's so much about like Joel's relationship with Ellie and less about Ellie herself so much of the first game. So I think that's what made Left Behind so good, was it was like, oh, we actually are seeing Ellie and like her life and her life before this. And we also got a peek into like what a child who's growing up in like the kind of industry is like. I don't know, industry is not the right word, but like the weird kind of government.
The QZs, like the like
what is that like?
Whatever's left of the actual government.
Right.
Last of Us 3, Dina, Ellie, and everybody else, and Abby comes back and joins forces with them, and they train JJ to be a scientist so that by the time he's like 20 or 30 and Ellie's like 50, she finally turns to him and says, I'm ready.
It's time.
And then
he's young. Like, why is it like 70?
Well, it's in Last of Us years. It's hard living. And then you finally at the end perform the surgery on Ellie as JJ, who has trained his whole life to make the vaccine, and finally you bring it full circle, and then they disperse it in a satellite, and the entire world is cured. And also, one last thing before I go if you need gas, go to Seattle. They have plenty. They're running generators, they have boats. Everybody else is using fucking horses. Just bring your car. Go get some gas from Seattle.
Plenty of disinfectant still around.
Plenty of stuff. I left tons of duct tape around.
The antibiotics apparently never expire. There's like 30-year-old medical supplies.
No, they help you learn stuff too.
Perfectly good.
I like this game. I don't think I love it, but I think it's a good game. I think
I like that a lot. Yeah,
it's nitpicking for some of the stuff, though. I do think the story stuff wasn't as effective as the first game, but on its own, I think it's a fine game, but not one of my favorite games. I don't think I love it. I think I like it a lot.
I think for me, this is a game where I enjoyed the gameplay. I did not love the story, and I was overall, I think, a little disappointed in it. And also, I think this would be a game where if I wasn't in this industry, if I played the first 10 hours and fell off of it, I would have been perfectly satisfied.
I think I wound up liking the smaller story beats rather than like the overarching story. Like I love a lot of the notes. I love a lot more of the moment-to-moment stuff. Like the flashback when you go to the museum, I really like a lot.
Yeah,
that's nice.
But I wound up liking this game a lot more than the first one gameplay-wise.
Yeah,
like I fell off of the first one, and I kind of had to force myself to finish it just to remember what was going on. But here, I wound up just enjoying the gameplay exponentially.
I actually,
much more.
I might play through it again when the next patch comes out and add some stuff because I liked the gameplay that much. I think it works for me on a gut level very well, even though, like I said, academically you can look at a lot of it and go like, yep, pretty clear what you're trying to do here. It's a little heavy-handed, but
I wouldn't mind New Game Plusing it with that submachine gun or that machine gun with the silencer and seeing how that goes.
I want to, I'd have to look. I want to say you don't. God,
you don't start with it, but it said Ellie gets her weapons when she gets.
I thought I stopped the recording. Sorry. Yeah, I think you have to get to a certain point in the story to get all the gear back or something like that. But yeah,
that's fine. All
Use
right.
the explosive arrows. They're very useful.
Oh God, those things are savage, man. They're horrible.
Yeah.
Talk about dismembering people. It's awful.
Yeah, I think. I don't. How do you? I guess don't spoil this. Don't spoil stuff in the I don't know. If people are clicking on this page, how do you do this? If you're commenting on the site,
it's probably it will probably say Spoilercast right in the name of this thing. So
I guess try to use spoiler blocks if you want to add what you're.
Sure, spoiler text stuff.
In the comments, but like I don't know. It's also if you're listening to this, I don't know. Take what I say with a grain of salt. I don't hate it. Like I feel like it comes off like I hate it. I kind of don't. I think.
I didn't get that.
I think, like I said, I think there's plenty to criticize about it. But
yeah,
I also think it's okay.
Works pretty well.
If someone doesn't like your favorite game, sometimes that's all right.
Yes, that goes.
We're all gonna get through it. That's a
cannot be said enough.
No, don't go on a revenge quest.
Also, don't threaten the voice actors if you don't like a character.
Yeah,
that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, don't do that. All right, Brad, take us out of here.
All right, hey, we're done. Thanks everybody for listening to our Last of Us Part 2 Spoilercast. See you in 12 years for The Last of Us Part 3 on the PlayStation 6. Thanks, bye.